Hey everybody, welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com. Happy Wednesday morning and welcome to another episode of the Abroaders Travel Podcast. I'm Erik Paquette here with AJ Dunn, and today we are going to be talking about award ticket pricing. You can find show notes for today's episode at abroaders.com/award pricing. All right, man, so what's going on in a broader world this week?
Just got some good news, man. Just got confirmation that our fellow abroader and traveler Ryan was successful in navigating the mild chaos that is the Brazilian consulate, and he snagged a 10-year visa just in time to get on down to Rio de Janeiro and join us for Carnival 2014.
Brilliant news. That's the one consolation with the Brazilian visas. At least you just have to do it once a decade, and yeah, well,
exactly.
Can be a character builder for sure. I did it in Colombia, and that was just as interesting. Andrew had to go, or Ryan rather had to go into the consulate in Miami because he was short on time to do it by mail. So good for him. Congrats to Ryan. Looking forward to hanging out with him during Carnival. Speaking of that, we've got a couple of requests to do a video episode. So we're gonna show up and record from the middle of the party, commit to making that happen. Got a little bit of logistics to figure out, but you should see a special edition of the Abroaders podcast go up on the website sometime in the first week of March.
Yeah, man, that's gonna be a blast. And lastly, we've got some great travel reporting coming up in the next couple of weeks. So if you work for the U.S. State Department, turn it down, don't listen, because Erik is heading to Cuba. And I am really excited to see what you find there, man. I'm excited to see some of the notes you write up, to see the pictures you take, to see the video, man. I'm just really excited to see what it's like, get some feet on the ground there.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of friends that we've talked to that are, fellow entrepreneurs, fellow abroaders that have been, and, every single person I've talked to says it's phenomenal. So kind of been at the top of my list of international destinations for close to 10 years, and I'm really excited to see the place and share that experience with all you guys.
Sweet, man. All right, so we've been bouncing around the new and noteworthy section of iTunes a little bit, playing some pinball, if you will. Yesterday we're there front and center. Today, nada. So if you're digging what we're teaching on this podcast, hop on over to the iTunes store and leave us a 5-star review.
Right on. Number one way you can support the show, and frankly, there's a bunch of people out there that haven't heard us that are looking for great travel content. So if you give that feedback, also huge motivation for us to put in the hours to produce the show. Right now, I've got about 10 beaches within a few mile radius here, so it's one of the things that keeps me hammering away at the keyboard and doing these recording sessions.
Yeah, man, that's good stuff. All right, so let's read a review really quick, and then let's get to the show. So this week we've got Scoth M31. He writes, "Superb. I have used the Abroaders expertise on several occasions, the most noteworthy of which was a fabulous honeymoon to the Bahamas. By using credit card churning tips, I was able to travel there with my beautiful wife for pennies on the dollar. Outstanding and informative pointers are found here." Thank you very much, Mr. Scoth M31.
Yeah, congratulations on getting married, man.
Big time, big stuff. All right, guys, time to get cracking. We have a ton to cover today.
Okay, so last episode we did a high-level overview of award chart pricing, booking and routing rules, as well as airline alliances. Today we're going to be breaking down the 3 most common pricing structures for award tickets and teach you how to look for those sweet spots that give you oversized value for your hard-earned points. To review, an award chart is just a list of prices for all the destinations an airline flies. After airlines have weeded out all the suckers that buy overpriced coffee makers and Applebee's gift cards and all that, their next opportunity to reduce cost is by getting the majority of flyers to pay more than they need to for their award tickets. It can be a little overwhelming to keep everything straight. Airlines don't make a lot of effort to be transparent, and some of them have multiple charts and all this stuff. We're going to clear everything up for you today.
Yeah, so in other words, if Erik and I are looking at flights to Rio, he could end up paying twice as many miles with the same frequent flyer program for a flight that leaves just, a few hours different than mine. So as a rule of thumb, you should always price an award ticket out manually before you call or book online. You got to know what it should cost, and you got to be persistent. Some airlines, they rely on computer systems to determine the miles required for a trip, while others leave the calculation to the telephone agents. Regardless, award tickets get mispriced all the time, and it is easy to overpay if you let your guard down. So look it up, know what you should be paying, and don't let some agent bend you because they don't know enough about their program.
It's funny, yeah. There's some of the people that work with us in the booking service. They've been able to convince some of these airline agents some crazy stuff that don't know their geography all that well. So it definitely pays to know what you can do, and sometimes you can get away with stuff that you're not even supposed to be able to do.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Anyways, before we jump into details on zone, distance, and fixed value charts, let's take a quick second to cover how airlines allocate seats for purchase with points as opposed to paying cash fares. The industry term for seats you can book with your points is award inventory. As you probably know, predicting passenger volume is one of the big challenges faced by airlines. Some flights go out nearly empty. You can stretch out and sleep across 5 seats in the middle of coach. Other times you're stuck in seat B between 2 fat, talkative, smelly neighbors without an empty seat. That's a little sensitive. That was my flight to Brazil this last time around.
It's happened to everybody.
Everybody's been there.
So in general, if a flight is unlikely to sell all the seats to paying customers, airlines will release more seats into that award inventory we talk about. So this way, they get the liability of the frequent flyer miles off their books in exchange for seats that would otherwise just be wasted, empty seats. So the prediction about how many tickets will be sold is constantly changing. So you may see different results in pricing tomorrow than you saw today.
Almost all frequent flyer programs offer multiple award ticket prices on the same seat depending on whether they think that flight will sell out. So American, for example, offers a limited number of Saver awards at half the price of a standard award. Delta offers 3 different tiers. The bottom line is that unless you have absolutely no flexibility in your schedule or routing, you should always be looking for the Saver or lowest cost tier for redemptions. It's a simple rule of thumb, but it guarantees you're going to get twice as much travel out of your miles than the sucker who just hopped on the website and booked the first trip to the destination he wanted to go.
Yeah, you got to remember that award inventory is different for every flight. Changing to a different day or picking a different route can save you tens of thousands of miles. It's possible to have a situation where all the Saver seats are taken in coach, but not in business or first class.
Great point, man. And in fact, I'm actually going to be taking advantage of that really soon. Headed home for our good friend Tony's wedding in May. And when I'm flying back to Brazil for the World Cup in June, I booked my flight. The economy seats were at the standard pricing with American, which is 55,000 miles, and the business class had Saver seats, which are only 50,000. So in other words, I'm going to be getting a fully flat bed, a decent meal, and an open bar on my flight, all for fewer miles than cramming into coach and back.
Yeah, man, that's huge value. You've saved 5,000 miles to have a way better flying experience. So how do we search for this? All right, so the best place to search for award inventory, it varies by program. Some airlines have a decent website that let you search and book awards online. Others require some phone calls and a bit more creativity. We're going to get into the research and booking strategies in a lot more detail in a couple weeks. If you're looking to book soon, shoot us an email and we'll point you in the right direction, because this stuff can be pretty confusing in some cases with certain programs.
Right on. All right, so as we mentioned on last week's show, there are 3 basic pricing structures for award tickets: zone-based, distance-based, and fixed value. The most common is zone-based, so we're going to start with that. These award charts divide the world into regions and set fixed prices for flying from one region to the other. Each frequent flyer program draws its zone boundaries a little bit differently, so having a diverse portfolio of points can be a big advantage since you get to choose to book with the program that gives you the best pricing for the route that you want.
One of the big opportunities with the zone-based charts is building in stopovers or open draws, so you get to see more new places on a single trip. In most cases, the itinerary will be priced based on your origin and final destination.
So lots of these loopholes that really seem to contradict logic. For our trip to Thailand, Indonesia, and Vietnam, it was actually cheaper to go from the U.S. all the way to Asia and stop in Europe on the way there than it would have been to just book a round trip to Europe. All right, AJ, so let's make this a little bit easier and give some real-world example of Saver-level round-trip pricing on travel from the United States.
Okay, to fly to Europe and coach, you're looking at a range of 40 to 60,000 miles on Delta, America, and United. If you want to fly in business class, the price range would be 100 to 140,000 miles.
Okay, so to get to South America in coach, you're looking at, again, 40 to 60, and in business, 100 to 125,000 miles. So here's where it gets interesting. United and American have Bolivia in the more expensive South American Zone 2, along with the nearby neighbors Brazil, Argentina, and Chile, and a couple of others. Delta has it with the northern half of South America, so the award is cheaper. This kind of thing exists all over the place with these zone-based charts. So we're going to make a list and create a resource of some of the sweet spots there, but it pays to check it out or hire somebody to look into it for you.
Yeah, an example would be lots of abroaders just know they want to do a South America tour, no country in any particular order. They just want to get down there and hit the circuit. So they're going to be doing a lot of traveling to different countries. So in those situations, you get your international flight to the place in the cheap zone, and then you hodgepodge with buses or short flights or, figure out your other travel for the rest of the trip. But the key is getting down there to that cheap zone and then doing your secondary traveling on short flights and buses.
Exactly. It's like buying the cheap seats at the game or the
get into
concert,
the venue, man.
and then you just start pushing your way down to the front. All right, so one quick note on one-way awards. The examples we just went over, United and American, let you book one-way at half price of round trip, and Delta doesn't. So you have to have enough points for the full award price in a single frequent flyer account to be able to book. So let's say you're just getting into the travel hacking game. It can be hard to come up with enough points for a round trip in a single set of credit card applications. Let's say there's not that many good offers for Delta around right now. The best you can get is maybe 30 or 40,000 points. All the Delta redemptions we just talked about are at 60,000. So if you're in that situation, you're just getting started, take a look at United and American because those one-ways can be critical. You can get the inbound flight with American and the outbound flight with United. It makes it way easier to put those miles together and get your actual travel booked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the discussion here about comparing prices is only really relevant for two scenarios. The first one being if you're planning a credit card churn with a specific trip in mind and you want to go after the right type of points. And the second one is if you're like us and you've been in the game for a while, you should have diversified points across 5 to 10 programs. When you're in this situation, you may have several viable options to book your award ticket, so you want to look at all the options before making your decision.
Right on. Basically, if you have more than one option, key questions to ask yourself: how easily can I replace the points or miles that I'm spending with a new credit card sign up? And what redemption will leave me with the most diversified portfolio? So obviously, if you've got 200,000 United miles and only 40,000 American, you probably want to use the bigger balance so you can stay diversified and have more options in the future. The biggest drawback here is that it can be time consuming to check prices across a whole bunch of award charts and airlines. So if you're too busy, hire us or another expert to take a look at it and get you the best deal. The good news for you guys starting out is all of this complexity only kicks in once you've accumulated a bunch of points. It's a nice luxury, but if you're just starting, don't worry about it. By the time you accumulate all those points, you'll have plenty of experiences to know what to do with them. All right, so that pretty much covers the basics of zone-based charts. Let's talk distance.
Distance-based award charts set a price based on the real-life number of miles between two airports. Distance charts provide huge opportunities if you can find the right cities inside the edge of the range. So we're going to focus on British Airways and American Airlines because it's easy to earn points on those two programs. But just for reference, here are some of the others. ANA, which stands for All Nippon Airways, but we'll always refer to them as ANA, Cathay Pacific, Japan Airlines, those are all based in Asia. You've got LAN, which is based in South America, and of course, like we said, you got British Airways based in Europe, and American Airlines, obviously based in North America.
All right, so as we already said, American's main chart is zone-based, but they also have a really interesting distance-based chart that's got some cool opportunities. We're going to cover that at the end of the show. Let's start with British Airways.
Yeah, so with British Airways, these points are really easy to get with credit card signups, so it's worth talking about them in detail. Not only does Chase issue a card that earns BA points, but the program is also a transfer partner of Amex Membership Rewards, Starwood Preferred Guest, and Chase Ultimate Rewards. It's actually the only airline that partners with all three of the transferable currencies, so this is essentially the trinity of transferable points.
Very nice. Right on. So the critical factor with maximizing British Airways points is being able to find a direct flight. The more stops you have, the worse deal you get, and the more complicated your research. You can get huge value on a short-haul direct flight, especially last minute when the prices go way up. So the cheapest one-way flight with less than 2 or 3 stops from Detroit to New York right now is over $500, and round trips are anywhere from $600 to $1,000. So by contrast, AJ, if you wanted to go to New York tomorrow, say, you could use British Airways points and pay $2.50 in taxes and 4,500 points each way.
Yeah, that's pretty ballin'. Now, one thing to watch out for with British Airways is that first class is triple the price of coach. Short flights are usually just coach and first, so you get a really bad deal if you sit up front. The more individual flights on your itinerary, the more likely there won't be coach available, and you'll end up paying triple price.
Okay, so coach being the best deal is pretty much unique to British Airways. Generally, the best deals in travel hacking are international long-haul flights in business or first class, because those airfares typically cost anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000, and it only costs 20,000 extra points compared to coach, so it's a really good deal. A little while back, our friend Tony signed up for the British Airways Visa card from Chase, and he earned 75,000 points as a bonus. He's getting married in May, and just yesterday I was helping him book his honeymoon trip to Mexico using the BA points. This turned out to be a little bit tricky, so I wanted to tell the story just because it's a perfect example of why it's better to use British Airways for direct flights. We're looking at availability on American, which is one of the One World partners for British Airways. Tony lives pretty much right between Detroit and Chicago, so we had both as options for the departure airport. But the problem is, American doesn't have any direct routes from Detroit or Chicago to Puerto Vallarta to Mexico. All the routes stop in Dallas or Phoenix or somewhere else, so the cost in points was quite a bit higher. If there had been a direct flight, it would have cost $40,000. With the stop in Dallas, it was at least $60,000. Still wouldn't have been a bad deal, but to further complicate, all the flights weren't available in coach, just like we talked about before. So Tony ended up having to pay triple points for a couple of segments. We were able to get everything worked out, and he booked the trip for 90,000 points, which was just a few points under what he had, and about $150 in taxes. It was a really good win because if he had had to buy the flights, he would have ended up paying over $1,400 for the trip.
So there are a few key takeaways here from Tony's experience. First, Tony still got an awesome deal. He saved big money that he can now spend on additional luxuries during his honeymoon. The points probably took about an hour of his time, so this is a massive return on investment. Second, he could have really benefited from being better diversified. United, American, Alaska, and U.S. Airways, which are all zone-based charts, all could have each gotten him to his destination for around 70,000 points and slightly less in taxes. He got lucky, though, and he snagged those last couple seats from British Airways. Third, limited schedule flexibility played a role in making this a challenging redemption. Obviously, you can't move around weddings, so we had a narrow departure window to deal with. So if you compare the redemption, Tony's getting about 1.5 cents worth of airfare per point, and Erik would be getting more than 11 cents per point.
So I had our booking service take care of the reservation as an early wedding present for Tony, but it still took our guys more than 3 hours. So this is probably a really good example of a time where it'd be worth paying some money to have a pro do all the work.
Yeah. So bottom line, travel hacking, it's about getting where you want, when you want, at a reasonable price. And Tony definitely succeeded there. Okay, we're going to give you some quick info on 2 more charts. First, ANA is unique because they're in the Star Alliance, and they have totally different partner airlines than the distance-based program in One World Alliance. On the downside, ANA charges some pretty substantial fuel surcharges on partners, so your trip can end up costing north of $500 even if you use points.
All right, so we said we were going to talk about American Airlines. They do use a zone-based chart for their own flights, but they use a distance-based chart for One World partners. It can be a hassle, but there is an awesome travel hacking opportunity in American Airlines distance-based chart. First of all, they have 2 rules. One of them is that you have to use at least 2 of their partners that are part of the One World Alliance, and you can't include American Airlines on any of the flights. The second rule is the good one. You can get unlimited stopovers. So It would be possible to go from LA to New York City to Barcelona, Spain, Munich, Germany, Bangkok, Thailand, Sydney, Australia, and Auckland, New Zealand, all on one award, and you can stop in every single spot. The only requirement is you got to finish the trip within a year of starting it. So that's a really awesome deal. And you can get points on American by transferring from Starwood Preferred Guests or with various co-branded credit cards, most of them from Citi.
That's a pretty big time itinerary. You really, outside of a NASA or a SpaceX space shuttle, you really can't do much more.
By the way, that falls into their under 20,000 miles, real miles category on their chart. I think it comes out to 100,000 in coach, which, interestingly enough, right now there's a card being offered by Citibank that gives 100,000 points. So it's kind of complicated to get that one. It's expensive, but definitely worth it if you're trying to book that type of itinerary. You can literally go around the world and see a ton of international awesome cities. So the last pricing model here is the fixed value chart. Pretty simple. 1 point equals a certain amount of money towards the fare you want to redeem. Most of the programs that fall into this category are bank points, like Capital One No Hassle Rewards, Barclays Arrival, Citi Thank You, and US Bank's Flex Perks. Although you tend to get less value per point than with a clever zone or distance-based redemption, fixed value makes up lots of ground by being flexible.
Yeah, you can redeem for airfare on any airline and simply get reimbursed for the price of the trip. Normally, you do need to have enough points for the whole redemption, though. So what that means is if you have $500 worth of points, you can't buy a $550 ticket and pay for that additional $50 in cash.
Another advantage here is that you're not subject to the limited award inventory scenario. If there's a seat for sale to the general public, you can usually use those fixed value points to get it.
Yeah. All right, so we are running out of time, so here's 3 key takeaways from fixed value charts. First, there really aren't a ton of tricks or loopholes here, but that doesn't mean you should ignore these types of charts. Second is fixed value awards are great for scenarios where zone and distance pricing aren't a big advantage or there aren't any award seats available. And finally, it's great to have these in your portfolio to connect the dots. Erik and I did an open jaw on our last trip to Asia, so we had to find our own way from Bangkok to Ho Chi Minh City. Barclays Arrival points turned out to be the best option to cover that flight and complete the around-the-world itinerary we had.
All right, folks. So we went into a lot of info today. Make sure to send your questions to Erik or AJ at abroaders.com, or you can send us a message to the website at abroaders.com/AUA. There are links to Delta, United, American, and British Airways current charts in the show notes, as well as our favorite tool for calculating the distance between two airports for distance-based pricing.
Also, if you have not already, sign up for our email list and get access to new resources that are in the works, including easy comparison chart for distance-based pricing and a list of countries like Bolivia that are zone-based loopholes.
Thanks for spending your time with us today. It's always a pleasure to spend Wednesday mornings sharing this hobby with all you abroaders out there. This week's International Jam required a little extra help from our friend Idausa over at mimicmethod.com. I picked this song as the jam and then realized I actually had no idea how to correctly pronounce the title or the artist. Lucky for us, Idausa speaks French, which is the core language of this song, and 3 other languages outside of English with native fluency, and he is an expert in pronunciation. Hopefully he's listening and I can do a decent job of not butchering this. He was nice enough to send me a little audio crash course. So Youssoupha is a French rapper of Congolese origin, and his song Apprentissage is new educational material for my training French pronunciation. If you want to learn language, you've got to check out Idausa. He's got revolutionary learning methods at mimicmethod.com.
He is the real deal, and we get no money for that plug. It's just because he is the man.
J'ai appris ce qu'était le manque quand j'ai perdu celle qui m'a donné la vie. Et sur le moment j'étais bon pour l'asile. Je me guéris avec la zik pour sortir du coma. C'est tragique, j'attends le fils qui voudra bien d'un père comme moi. J'ai appris l'extase en montant sur scène. Le bordel dans les salles avec ou sans le succès, tu sais.
Hey brothers, don't be shy. The best part of our day is connecting with you. Send your show feedback, comments, or questions to Erik or AJ at abroaders.com. You can also leave us an audio note right on the website and maybe even get yourself featured on the next episode of the Abroaders podcast.
Alors me parlez plus d'anti-Vénus. Bienvenue à Babylone, je suis à l'affût car j'ai appris que les droits de l'homme s'arrêtent aux portes de la garde à vue. S'il y a bavure sur moi que la mort se montre, ne pleurez pas, j'ai appris que le paradis n'est pas de ce monde. Isolé loin des autres comme un damné. Désolé pour mes fautes depuis des années. Je suis désarmé, je sais désormais que la vie est un apprentissage qui ne finit jamais. Isolé loin des autres comme un damné. Désolé pour mes fautes depuis des années. Je suis désarmé, je sais désormais que la vie est un apprentissage qui finit jamais.